Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Ho-Chunk Nation Department of Health Public Health Virtual Education Series, Wazooki Wo'ehi, Family Conversations. My name is Renelle, Public Health Nurse, and I am joined by Jamie, Public Health Worker Supervisor, and we will be your hosts. Our Department of Health is guided by the vision of building a strong mind, body, and spirit together. Through this virtual education series, we will hope to bring our communities together by sharing knowledge, strengthening connections, and encouraging conversations that support lifelong wellness. In public health, our commitment is to promote, protect, and prevent. Each month, we will partner with knowledgeable presenters to explore topics that support healthier individuals, stronger families, and thriving communities, while highlighting Ho-Chunk culture, resources, and services available for our communities. We are pleased to welcome back John and Joe from Ho-Chunk Behavioral Health, who will be continuing their conversation from earlier this summer around men's mental health. The presentation will last approximately 45 minutes and will be followed by a brief Q&A. Please use the chat to submit your questions or comments through the presentation. Jamie and I will monitor the chat and share your questions with our presenters during the Q&A. If you prefer, you are also welcome to raise your hand and come off mute to ask the question yourself. If we are unable to answer every question today, we will forward them to our presenters and provide responses following the session. Today's presentation is being recorded and will be available on the Department of Health website and our Facebook page. Please join us in welcoming John and Joe.
Good morning.
Good morning. Afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good morning, afternoon. Sorry. So today we're gonna present part 2 of our men's mental health presentation. To begin, we're just asking Joe to opening up with a prayer.
All right. Let's bear along a little bit here. Heavenly Father, Creator, heaven, earth. Once again, we come before you and we beseech your goodness here, Heavenly Father, and we give you all the praise and all the glory. And we thank you for this opportunity to talk about our mental health, men's mental health, and just healthy living all the way. And God, just continue to be with us as you guide us, guide our words, guide our actions. God, we want to promote your goodness, promote your love. God, that we could all have a happy, safe family, and give us the courage and the obedience to become better men, better leaders in our families. Continue to watch over us as we strive to promote a good life for our children. And you know how we always say, God, and try to make it better than what we left it. God, help us be that way, God. Help us and help us in our minds and our hearts. We could have a soft heart and we could have an open mind to your goodness. That's all these things in your son's name, Jesus, our Lord, our Savior. Amen.
Pardon me. I'd just like to introduce myself. My name is John Plugere. I've been working with Ho-Chunk Nation Behavioral Health for approximately 12 years. I started working in Black River Falls as a behavioral health clinician too. And I transferred to the House of Wellness under Dr. David Nelson's leadership. At that time, we had Joe White Eagle, Stephanie White Eagle, Christine Preston, and myself here, and many others along the way kind of joined the team or left the team. I'm very pleased that Joe White Eagle and Stephanie White Eagle came back to Ho-Chunk Nation Behavioral Health this past year. It's been such a blessing, and I'm just very grateful to even be presenting today. I just feel very comfortable with Joe. We're neighbors. I consider him a friend. I'm very grateful to have his guidance in my life and that mentorship. That means a lot to me. A little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on the north side. My father, he was born and raised in Milwaukee as well, and under some poverty kind of situations. He lost his father at a young age, and at one point, as a young man, um, he jumped in a vehicle with two other gentlemen and a friend, and they had a joyride. They two guys, two neighborhood kids stole a car, and and my dad and his best friend Mouse jumped in, and by the time they were done cruising around and showing off, the police caught up with them, and everybody took off, and my dad refused to communicate who stole the vehicle, and same thing with Mouse. At that time and place, that was out of respect, that you keep things to yourself, you keep things quiet, and that was kind of the culture of respect at that time. So he ended up having a choice, and his choice was to go to a juvenile delinquent center or to join the military. And he chose to join the military. So he joined and he joined the Army, and he became a 6th Special Forces Green Beret. And he served prior to Vietnam, as Vietnam was popping off, and before everything got pretty hectic. He served during that time. My godfather, my dad's twin brother, he served in the Air Force and was training dogs at that time prior to Vietnam. And I love my dad so much. He's going to be 81 years old, or he's 81 years old this year, August 1st. And he taught me a lot about resiliency, about being kind and patient, gender roles, what is to be expected from the culture that we grew up in, and for our heritage. Clougère is a French last name from his family. We have my brother, I, and the sister have 6% Native ancestral DNA that comes from my father's lineage, and I'm just so proud of my dad and everything that he did, and from the situation that he grew up in, to be able to give us such a good life. I have a great relationship with my mom. She was born and raised in Milwaukee as well. They gave us a great opportunity for education, continue education support. I was able to go to UW Milwaukee for my undergraduate degree, and I got that in clinical psychology, and then I got a master's degree in Cardinal Stritch University. And along the way, my dad's grade school best friend was Gordon Thayer. He's since passed in recent time, and Gordon, he is an LCO member, multiple LCO chairman. He ran Overcomers Ministry, was a major player in our lives, married my brother and his wife, and he didn't marry them, but he married them. And he was instrumental in the work that I did with even taking a native internship in the NACE mental health in Milwaukee, and working with his Overcomers Ministry. And he also had a halfway house and sober living and homelessness initiatives in Minneapolis, and he was doing a lot of work. And so he even took us to Mishmigogama, Ontario, Canada, to just provide First Nation just good services, just to be a light, hope, to serve and to do good things. And so I really appreciate all the things that he gave me and instilled in me. And this is one of the major reasons that I worked and came here for the Ho-Chunk Nation. In preparation to coming here, before I started 12 years ago, he sat me down and he told me some stories. He told me some things, and they just really resonated with me. And he wanted me to be prepared and to be resilient, and to be good and good-hearted. He even introduced the term I've never heard before, is lateral transference. He said, if we're doing really good in our communities, in our lives, and in our homes, we're going to transfer that into our working relationships, our environments, and into good things. He said also, too, on the inverse, if we're struggling with historical trauma, grief, loss, intergenerational issues, problems, adverse childhood experiences, we are going to bring that into our working relationships and our professionalism. And he said that this is to be a light of good hope, encouragement, and to no matter what you're doing. So I really want to honor them and take that moment to communicate that this is kind of a place that where I come from, and it helps shape the way that I look at the world and communicate today. So thank you for giving me a moment to introduce myself. And Joe, if you don't mind, we want to give an introduction.
Yeah, my name's Joe White Eagle. My hotel name is Nachkiru, which means like King of Hearts, or my uncle says the Prince of the Good-Hearted People. So my grandfather, uh, my Choka, I guess my Choka Floyd, it's my dad's dad, and my dad's Morgan White Eagle, and then my mom is Marie Whiteberry White Eagle. I grew up in the area here, the Nijila area, most of my life, or all my life, probably just left for brief a brief time to go into the military. Was in the Marines. Did a couple of tours in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and down in Japan, and so I kind of got to see the country that way. Um, but yeah, since I got back, I wanted to help people. I wanted to help them maybe think better, live better, make better choices. We see our relatives; they suffer. So I went to college and I got a bachelor's degree in human services to help people. Then with that, I got a substance abuse counseling license to practice that. So that's what I was doing when John came aboard. He was here. Enjoy my friend here, my partner, and then we're neighbors, like you saying, and really enjoy working with him. We have a good friendship. And so I wanted to introduce myself that way and just here to help with the cultural stuff. I grew up around the Native American church, and then I do sweat lodges, and I try to live a kind of a humble life, or kind of sacred. Keep it secret. I mean sacred. But I enjoy doing the ceremonies. I do different ceremonies to help people get through some of their roughest times in their lives, when they lose a relative, and then some of the happiest times when they get married or they're celebrating birthdays. And so I'm around different people to hear their stories and hear their happiness and hear their struggles. So I really enjoy doing that. I don't really say a lot. I do more of an action. My dad always said action speaks louder than words. So that's the kind of person that I am. I have a good heart, and I like to listen, and I like to maybe provide answers and solutions, I guess, solution focused. So that's kind of my mentality. So kind of I'm good at taking orders, and then at the same time good at listening, and then good at maybe having some solutions if they work through our spiritual side, um, spiritual wellness, and even spiritual maturity. And then mental how we think, even, and thinking even thinking better, and then our emotions, how we feel. So these are kind of areas that I really enjoy talking about and engaging in through the ceremony, through my work, and it's through my everyday life. So I want to say thank you. That's me, uh, uh, Joe White Eagle Senior, Hatchgale.
All right, thank you. So for today, we'll just briefly go over the men's mental health, the first presentation. I believe that is a recorded video, and we'll kind of briefly touch base of what was introduced. And then the primary intention for today is just a brief presentation and then question and answers. I think that last time we were just going and riffing a little bit too long, and at some point we missed out on the question and answer portion, and just said, hey, we can come back and do it again.
Yeah.
And so thank you for welcoming us back. So the brief presentation, question and answer, and then going into just a little bit like what is Ho Chunk Nation doing for men's behavioral health and mental health as well too. Just touching base with that. So the summary of the first presentation, that was on, I believe it was on Wednesday, June 3rd. The Family Conversations hosted that, and we kind of just introduced like Maslow and hierarchy of needs. And that time, just introducing how he worked with the Blackfoot Nation and what he did with his research, and just the things that kind of came about from even trying to understand what different cultures value and what makes somebody prestigious. And so the summary for that was, out of his research, he kind of came up with a hierarchy of needs that we're not going to be able to attain a higher form of self or to personal growth and alteration, or to be altruistic, without being able to have food, water, shelter, safety, and security. But within that work with the Blackfoot Nation, he also too was able to communicate and understand that nation really revered the person who gave the most. It was not the person who had the most. It was the person who gave them the most, and how he witnessed that through ceremony, and just how that captured his attention, and really where that kind of laid a foundation for a lot of psychology and understanding of where we've come from. And I think it's important to understand this Western version of psychology and health, and how it can be integrated, and we can integrate and with culture, with the Ho Chunk Nation, with values and belief systems. So going back to that first presentation, we kind of also went through factors influences to health, wellness, and barriers that men experience. And so, for example, we kind of communicated things that we might have heard in our lifetime. For me, it was, man up, be strong, don't cry, right? You're not hurt, even as people pick up a little one. There's a point of regulation and trying to self-soothe and to do that. But there's messages that sometimes come across, and they leave the balance, and they become unharmonious. And that's where things can become a problem, when something's taken a little bit too far or out of context. And so some of those influencing factors of what it is to even be a man, what you're allowed to do or not do, those were some things that we kind of briefly discussed upon, and in the good and bad. So that brotherhood aspect. Why do some men join motorcycle clubs? Why do some men join the military? Outside of their family and service, there is also too an underlying aspect of brotherhood. Different things like that that can really influence men's mental health, and ultimately culture. The culture we live in has a major impact, and a lot of times we're living in two worlds or multiple worlds. Just today, I was discussing that about time, and we sometimes get used to a corporate view of time, and we get used to working a 40-hour, 50-hour work week, and we get used to seeing sometimes our coworkers more than we see our family. And that, just because sometimes we get used to that, doesn't always mean that that's healthy and that that's balanced, and then that cannot be something that we will at least have to be resilient to, or to ensure that we're healthy and well in many different ways, to have that balance in that kind of sense. We identified different problematic symptoms. So in men, sometimes depression doesn't look like depression. In children, sometimes depression does not look like typical depressive symptoms. And so how that can play out and how that can look. So we had warning signs and things to pay attention to when people change patterns and habits, when they lose interest in activities that were very meaningful, and relationships and connections. That was something that we kind of went through, just being able to identify those symptoms and warning signs, things to be able to intervene early. We don't want to wait until, our vehicles are broken down and on the side of the road and in major disrepair. We want to have regular maintenance. We want to have regular checkups. We want to have regular check-ins. And that can happen professionally. It can happen paraprofessionally. It can happen through friends and community. It can happen in so many different ways, through faith-based practices. There's so many ways to kind of identify a problem and intervene early. And so we kind of summarized or we went to the part of supporting. How do we support each other? reaching out and then assisting the men in your lives. Was there anything from that that you want to touch base on a little bit more from our first presentation, or something that would be really important for somebody who maybe didn't catch the first one that's watching today?
Yeah, maybe just the time part is the time is always gone, and you can never get back. You never can get back the time. So that time of just ceremonial time, family time, just your personal time. You know, really, like even that meditation time, just being with yourself to gather your thoughts and to enjoy the time that we are, say that in the moment. Sometimes we think in the past, oh, we had all this in the past, we had all this teachings or things like that. So we sometimes we fantasize about our ways too, our tribal ways and how it used to be. Then sometimes we're thinking way ahead what we could be. But I think like right now, the time that we enjoy is like being here, able to talk about these things here. The time is very important, and that's how like our children, our families, that's how they spell love is time. They just want to be with their fathers or be with their parents, or I wish I had more time with my father, my mother, type thing. And that really does a lot mentally, mental health, emotional health, when you understand and you can enjoy them. So I'm really glad that I had a lot of time with my dad and my mother and just everything that they've gone through in their life, and to see the resilience and then just to continue to have that unconditional love for their children, but then for the community, and especially when I know I've mentioned before. I think last time was when my parents lost their children. It was 5 children that they lost at once. It was 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Little guy. They're all in the stair step age group, and the oldest one was 5, and they all died in a house fire. And man, that could have really ruined somebody, like mentally. But here, my dad was resilient, and he stayed with the waves and stayed close to the fire, and he made it through that. Here, the Creator God gave him 5 more children back, and I'm the oldest of that second set. So even that story just kind of helps me, you know, enjoy the time, enjoy the moment. So time is really important, that we enjoy our families, to our friends, and making time. We can't make time. Time's going. Time's going all the time. You can't make it. You gotta prioritize our priorities. You gotta kind of have those in place. So I wanted to say that, and being obedient to that. And then being obedient doesn't mean like, like some people when they say obedience, they think the worst of it, being like, oh, you're in trouble or whatever. But obedient to yourself, obedient toward the Creator, obedient toward your wife or your family, your children. Those are things that we have to do. It gives us purpose in life. So I just want to mention that here with the healing and the wellness, and then kind of getting into some of the barriers that we experience, and how our elders, our forefathers, our ancestors, how they were able to get through those things through time, and really believing in the Creator, believing it. We say Mauna. We really believe that way. So I want to mention that.
And in recapping the summary for that first part too, is what some people ask and will say, they'll say, why are we focusing on historical traumas or intergenerational traumas or the hurt or the past? Or in some people, they've openly even asked and said, are you trying to make us a broken people? Or are we supposed to look at ourselves as a broken people? And other people look at that same thing, and they have different questions or points of view, and there's so many questions that often come from why, the importance of understanding that. And it is so important to understand what happened in the context of what happened or is happening sometimes in that kind of way. Because of that, what happened was the disconnect from culture. If food is medicine, the food that we have today, how did that look 300 years ago, 400 years ago? Anybody can take that and from their lineage and history, and to look at that. And if the language that we spoke was powerful and important to us and part of us, what has happened to language? Whether it was a boarding school that said, cut your hair, don't dress this way, don't speak this language, and how that had different effects to people, and being able to sometimes not want to be able to even pass that down to their own children because they were disciplined for speaking a language. And it just is, there's so many different effects that come from that, and it's so important to understand that because of resiliency and because of this idea that there is a reason, that when these hurt things happen, these bad things happen, they happened and they played out, and as those things play out, there's devastation, when there's disconnection, when there's move away from culture, that there's so many problems. And some of the problems that we're dealing with today, drugs and alcohol, this is putting a band-aid on a gushing wound. There's so many under the surface issues with adverse childhood experiences and hurt and the things that should have been happening. And we want to look at that context to understand the pain, the hurt, where this came from, because we are resilient. We there's so many opportunities for growth and change and prosperity, but it comes back from cultural connection, and it comes back from really understanding that is a foundation, almost like this, going back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs: food, water, shelter, safety, security, love, and how we have to have those foundations to be able to be the most productive versions of ourselves. So with that, it is ultimately very important to really go through what the impacts of genocide, historical trauma, boarding schools, genocide, the things that have happened, government sanctioned discrimination that has happened and occurred, to overcome that, and for strength base and resiliency purposes. Today we're going to move into supporting men's mental health, and going into conversation, encouragement, incorporation of Ho-Chunk Nation values and behavioral health methods. Really, where does this start? Like protecting our children, our teens, our young adults through culture, connection, relationships, and help seeking. Supporting our warriors, protectors, or guardians. Who protects the protectors? When people go off to war, and what do we do when they come back? And how do we support, individuals who sacrifice so much for us? The starting point goes into childhood development, basic needs. And so, with that being said, that conversation, our language is important, how we communicate with each other, talking about it, even like a presentation like this, to be able to have conversation, dialogue, to be able to communicate with individuals. Sometimes we lose sight of how to connect with our family, with our friends, and we wonder, am I going to bring this up and say, hey, how is your so-and-so doing? Is that going to hurt that person in the moment? That person was dealing with that person had that, whether it was conscious or subconscious, they had that there. Finding the right time and the timing and what happens to have that relationship, to be able to have these conversations, encouragement. It's like, how can we find ways to really promote these results that we want? And it may not be through this method or that method, but we can find somebody that somebody in our lives that they look up to, that they're connected with, in that sense. How do we bring Ho-Chunk values, incorporate them into behavioral health? And so with that, even in the health department, they have their 6 pillars, they have their mission statement, they have their core values. One of the core values from the health department is moving forward into their training guides for this next year is psychological safety. And they're communicating that has to be a foundation. If people are not safe and they're not secure, right, they're not going to be productive. They're not going to be their best selves. They're going to be quiet or shut their doors, or there's going to be an elephant in the room. And so these values of just really psychological safety, how can we be our best versions of ourselves towards each other? Moving into protecting our children and youth and adults through culture, connection, relationships, and help seeking. If we really want to make the best strides, a lot of people will say it's in prevention. It's preventative medicine is the way to go, because the amount of resources and time you put into prevention can really outweigh like the cost of ongoing adverse experiences or problems that can continue and span throughout the lifetime. So if we're not maybe supporting the children in our lives and the teenagers in our lives, the young adults, and really we'll define culture, connection, relationships, but just even the way that we encourage help seeking. So for example, Joe is our community care coordinator, and we're doing a sweat lodge ceremony this Friday, just encouraging people and just saying, come by. You can stop by before, stop by after. We're making some food, and to really try and make this an event and to communicate this. And so for the people who are uncertain about it, I got a gentleman that's coming in and it's going to stop by just to check it out and to hang around by the fire, and that saying, stay close to the fire, whether it's an MAC or sweat lodge ceremony. Maybe that's the way somebody is going to be encouraged for help seeking, or can make a connection with somebody within their family, or somebody that's a mentor. It has to be the right person, that right connection, that person that can just touch your heart and just tear down your defenses. That can come in so many different ways, and just encouraging help seeking in many different ways. In my family, we seek advice from our elders. This blanket over here, I'm not sure if you can see it, that Joe White Eagle gave me this and blessed it and said, this is wisdom from the elders. And then he communicated a story behind this and asked me to keep it and to have this, and what he wanted that for me to be as a reminder, a symbol, a staple that I could have and carry with me in that sense. And that was given to me in 2018. That meant so much to me and means so much to me. And I'm happy when somebody teases me, oh, you got your binky, you got your blanket. And I'll say, oh, this is the armor of God. This is what this means. This is for me, this is the breastplate of righteousness, the belt of truth, the shoes of peace. This is the helmet of salvation. This is a shield of faith and the sword of the Spirit. This thing is, I have to put this on daily to protect my heart. Why? Protect my heart, the breastplate. Protect your heart, to be soft and to be loving, caring. Protect the mind, right? The thoughts. The shield me from things that will come out. The walk in peace, to make every step I move forward to be peaceful, to walk that way. The belt. I'm not wearing a belt, and it's not gonna hold me up. I'm not gonna get far. I'm gonna stumble. Right? This keeps me together. That truth, that belt of truth, and it has meaning in my life and purpose in my life. And it's a symbol. It's something. But to be given that gift from somebody that you love and care about, it means so much more. And that's that connection, that relationship. Supporting warriors. I was a former firefighter, and you could see people who were first responders or protectors that over time they would maybe sometimes isolate. Other people would joke and tease, and it'd be kind of maybe graphic at times, that that's how they process, and they're at least using their words and humor to be resilient. And one thing from the fire departments, they noticed that it was much more effective to be able to debrief situations when it was somebody from their own crew, when it was somebody from their battalion, or it was their captain, or it was somebody else. But if an outsider came in and a therapist came in and said, hey guys, we're going to talk about feelings today. I heard you had a bad experience. Everybody would shut down. Why? There wasn't that connection. This person might look like me. They might talk a similar language, but they don't know me. They don't know what we've experienced. They don't know our crew. We have a different, subculture within that. And so you can find that in police officers, firefighters, and military. a lot of times it's having that person as a source or a connection that can really understand the battles or things that people go through. That's when healing can take place. It's hard to have anything that moves forward without a foundation, without a path set before us and an understanding and the ability to buy into that. And so that's really important, whether it's my role as a behavioral health clinician. Sometimes I'll have people request a male clinician, and that's their preference, whether they're female or male. And so for men coming in to see mental health, there's a lot of men that want to see a female counselor or a clinician. And sometimes there's a man that wants to see a male counselor or clinician. And everybody is independent of that, but it's based on their culture, their connection, their experiences. And that's why I believe the starting point is very important for childhood development, basic needs. Instead of adverse childhood experiences, are we giving the foundation for somebody to make mistakes, to explore, to learn, to be a child, to grow? And that comes with culture and community.
Yeah, sometimes when we are, as a warrior, we have these ceremonies that help us able to share some of that hurt or disconnect as we return back to civilian life or turn back to our tribe after being in a service. So a lot of these different parts in our culture, like funerals, our warriors talk, the featherings at the powwow, these different duties, tasks of a Ho-Chunk warrior. A lot of times they help them get through some of those hard, difficult times where they can be present in the family and be able to, as men, we are storytellers. We should be able to tell stories and um, connect with our family that way. And a lot of these different stories that we remember, a lot of them have humor in it, also to bring us around the culture and just want more of it. And we get we get opportunities to do that to promote that healthy living, healthy culture. And sometimes a lot of our young families didn't have that role in there. They come from broken homes. They had kids when they're young and they weren't ready to be fathers, and maybe their mother, they were just young parents and they had all these kids, and they're just learning how. So sometimes our young ones, they have to kind of find their own way because they're not coming around a culture or their family broke up. And maybe they're part of two different tribes, two different cultures. Maybe one's non-tribal. So there's always that portion there where we have to identify those problem areas and then seek help, seek understanding. Um, Maybe through our behavioral health services or through maybe an elder, and sometimes our elders, they get they're not able to express, or maybe some of them don't even remember some of the things. But we always gotta kind of encourage that to talk and to voice those hurts and through our culture, through our connections with our relationships. And I know in a family healing camp we had, they were talking about a lot of and what we're hitting on is identity. What is our identity? What kind of person are you? The warrior? Are you the prayer person? Are you the hunter? Are you the gatherer? So a lot of those identities, and I think we're all blessed with a spiritual gift. I would like to say, or something that we're really good at. We're always blessed with something like that, and then it's up to us to find out what that is. Just like in our families, they always say, like, in our families there could be like our identity. Sometimes there's in our children, like say we have a lot of children. Like I have five siblings, and they all say it's like a litter of puppies. Sometimes there's like a runt that's kind of they'll get, and there's always a star kid or whatever. So and find out where your place is in the family. That's a process there too. Like, oh, they're why they're giving up, because I was the oldest, so I got all the new stuff, and then the younger I just kind of passed. There was this the younger brothers got all my old stuff, and I was always get the new stuff type thing. Like that stuff, and we got to learn how to we learned how to understand those kind of value, what the money was worth. And we didn't have a lot, but it didn't seem like it. We had this whole life, our family and our culture, and it didn't seem like we had enough for it. We always had plenty of food. We always had, those kind of, man, if I could just think of my mom and dad at that time and they didn't have the money and how I am today, thinking of my kids, and
Right.
it's like, holy, how did they do that? How did they make all ends meet and get us to all these powwows or wherever we went growing up? All these, it was their resilience. It was their values that they had, and they really honored those things, and they really had the value in the family and the community. And we also had that culture, our Native American church family. It was big, and it was we always got together, and it seemed like we always felt loved all around. And I still say dad today, I still say mom today because of that. So I'm not an orphan or anything like that. In our tribe, we have these clan systems. You're part of a clan, you're part of a family. So that's very, very healing, and it's very strong. And if you can identify those, kind of tap into that. And then other times it gets difficult when our family is maybe using and things like that, or unhealthy. Maybe they're not getting the right help, and it's hard that when one of our family member is not healthy or not thinking well, and it messes the whole. And you might think they're just going through it, but it messes with the whole family dynamic because we all love each other. We want everybody to be happy, want everybody to be safe, kind of things like that. So we try hard to understand these things, supporting each other, protecting each other, those kind of things, and these warrior ways and our tribal ways. I'm just a young man trying to do my very best to help our youth. Like a lot of these things that are going on with our youth, and I think it comes down to identity. What is their identity? What is and we want to lean on cultural identity, but then at the same time, are they seeing that? Are they experiencing that? Are they going to ceremony? Are they getting a feather? Are they people telling them these things? And that's where we want to come in here and talk about mental health and where to seek help and where to get that connection to help you process this stuff and help you move through it. Through our spiritual ways and be healthy all the way around.
Well said.
Before you guys move on, there's a question. Can you explain the difference between historical trauma and generational trauma? Thanks.
Yeah. So historical trauma would be the trauma that has happened in history. It could be cited back to a date, a practice, a policy, implementation, something that has happened, and that has that historical value, and it kind of has a start point and where it came from, and the understanding that we have of that. That intergenerational trauma is like almost like a transference from one generation to another. And so, for example, if my dad lost his dad at age 12, and somehow that created a disconnect for relationship and for connectivity, and it created all kinds of issues and problems that then he had to deal with, and that could have easily then been transferred onto his relationship with me. But my dad had uncles, and he had brothers and family, and he had his neighborhood. He had so many friends and other people at that time, and they had ways of being resilient to that. And he promised himself things that he would do in life, and that part did not get transferred on his he had so much love to give, and he wanted to give that through his children, and he took that hurt and that pain. Sometimes it's not that easy. Some things happen to us in life, and they can be very traumatizing. They can shatter us down to the core of safety, security, basic needs, love, and that can really pass on. And an example of intergenerational trauma is when you hear from an elder that that their parents went to a boarding school, and from there they never ever wanted to speak the language or teach the language to their kids, in fear that in the future something like that would happen again. And if their children might have spoke that language, that they might be shuffled away or taken away or considered, a prime candidate for a boarding school or something that happened similar to them. And so intergenerationally, one person experienced the pain, the hurt, and trauma of a boarding school, and then somehow, even though they didn't pass that down to their kids, intergenerationally, they almost were very cautious of speaking their language and passing on a good custom, tradition, value. And so intergenerationally, there was a gap. How many parents come in here and say, my dad told me they love me, on once in their life, or at this momentous occasion in their life, and I didn't have that affectionate, father or person in my life. And you hear that, and that a lot of times that can be passed on and directly related, because somebody in their lineage was pulled from their family as a child during those critical moments where we're supposed to learn about attachment, we're supposed to learn about bonding and love and all these connections, and then that good thing didn't happen, and then it got passed down, and maybe the hurt didn't happen to the same extent, but maybe the love, the connectivity, maybe a parent said they loved you, but they couldn't make that connection of the feeling part. So Joe, what would you say for intergenerational trauma versus historical to differentiate those?
Yeah, I think I hit a little bit on it already with just our family, how we, the historical part of the removals of our tribes and, those kind of things that happen for our tribes. But then, and then coming back to generational, those things hurt. And then we didn't want to have that go on with our children. So like a lot of our families that are broken up, young families, that's that generational trauma. So then now, what is our young parents doing with their kids? Are they, I don't know, they didn't go around the ceremony no more because this happened. And so there's that generational trauma where, there's not that many going into the ceremony no more because something got hurt or some feelings got hurt or someone said something and they said, let's not. It's like in our village here, just example is our Ho Chunk village here where we're right in Ho Chunk village. We had all these houses and all the families that moved in. We had we had eats there. All the village, all the housing got together and they had singing, they had meals, they shared in a family gathering. We're all here in the village. But now you look at now, everybody's private. Everybody's, maybe something happened in the village, or maybe someone got too drunk, or some of that, or maybe a kid got lost or whatever. Now it's like, oh, we don't want to trust them. We don't want to trust. That's that was it the intergenerational trauma that seeks out. So now we don't even want to, like, oh, that neighbor, he's kind of crazy, and even we're supposed to love one another, but then certain things happen like that where we I don't know, we're unsure, like, and we're supposed to have that love for one another, but that's that intergenerational trauma effects. So we just gotta be resilient and to help. And you go over there, help them, get to know them, hey, what's going on here, Then then at the same time, is it our duty to do that? That's another part in yourself, because you want to go help somebody, but then it becomes like you're the main person. So how much do you give out, to help the situation of that person who's going through that trauma, and it's affecting the whole family, the whole tribe, and then just like in our village here, it affects that the camaraderie or the love that we have gathering. So now it's like, who are we going to to seek the help? So that's why we have these behavioral health clinicians here, modalities here to try to help us process that to get through it. And then some of our elders, they haven't worked on themselves. So you can see some of our elders, they're emotionally immature. They'll still throw tantrums. They'll still go high and to the right you know, my dad told me something when I was growing up. He was telling me kind of humorous time. He goes, yeah. He said when our elders, he said there's elders, and then there's old people. He told me. He said the elders, they don't have to tell you to respect them and that they're elder. You don't have to say it out loud. By the way that they carry themselves, by the way that they move into, they have knowledge to pass on to you, and they won't have to request that you respect them. You just know because of the way that they carry themselves. But then these older people, they got old and they don't know too much, and so they demand your respect. They say, "You're my elder, you gotta respect me." So you gotta be careful, son. He was telling me that. So I always kind of keep that in mind when I hear someone say, "I'm your elder." So like he didn't really have to say that, or he or she didn't have to say that, but my dad kind of warned me about people like that, where if you're elder, you have knowledge and wisdom to pass on to somebody, and then you carry it that way, then you're able to share that. So those are kind of one of the intergenerational traumas that even just within our elders. Now we got like elite elders, and we got elders, and we got baby elders, and what are they passing on? What are they teaching us? What kind of life are they living? Kind of things like that. We got to be careful of that stuff, kind of things like that. So that's part of that too. So we gotta be mindful of these kind of, I guess, pitfalls or slippery slopes in our culture, in our everyday life. Like the values that we have. Sometimes they've changed. Like what John was saying, they kind of what we went through historically. Some of our values have changed, and then as a young person, we start because they changed it to protect us from like a language or going to boarding schools. So they kind of changed the values, and then now we live by those values, and here we just live our life. And now here our families we're not together like before because our values change and those kind of things change on us, and so we have a hard time um, keeping those core values, those Ho Chunk values in place because we have a not the full value of it or the teachable moment or it's changed. So like someone said, like 2 + 2 was 6, which is not. But here then we live give us a core value like that, and then we made life choices with that information. 2 + 2 is 6, and then now as we get older, we say, "Whoa, wait a minute, there's something off here, something miss." And actually, 2 + 2 is 4, and we can go back and recapture that core value, and we can redo our life with a different value system in place. But because as a young person, we never was really told to ask. Oh, you don't ask, you just listen. But and then when you do that, sometimes they don't teach us all the good values that we're supposed to have within ourselves. We try to have that identity, we try to make that up. And here, as we go along with those core values, our lives get kind of chaotic and they get unhealthy at times, and then we start seeking other things. We start using, or we start trying to find something because we need something, and so our mental health we're hurting, our emotional health we're hurting. So what we do is when we hurt, we start using. We want to get pain free, I guess. So a lot of these things are here to help us to gain a better understanding of one another and of our cultural values. So that's kind of my take on this intergenerational trauma and historical trauma.
So Joe and I keep finding ways to get invited back to the next presentations, but I assure you I'm going to get through this next two-part here, so that there won't be a part 3 for this one. But connection, culture, and relationships, really supporting the spiritual, physical, mental, emotional health of the men in your lives. The connection could be like if I'm really connected to somebody. I'm linked up, associated, joined, bonded. I have that state of mind or being. and then feeling like I'm feeling heard or seen or understood in that kind of sense, and thinking like-minded. So that connection is so important. If you cannot connect to somebody, it's missing an element. It's not harmonious. It's out of balance. Culture, having health, wellness, and harmony through cultural connectivity, really making the culture components connect to who we are, and that's identity. Then, as Joe said, it's like it goes back to identity. When we can make the connection and the culture together, then we can identify that we are this. We are resilient. We are, we have a name. We have a whole chunk name, or we have a practice, whether we're traditional or NAC or we do sweat lodge. There's so many things that we can identify with, and that kind of sets this path before us in these relationships. Having that, like that, I kind of think of the whole chunk nation kinship and the relational factors. So do you have, is this your Jaji? Is this your Dega? Who is this? And this isn't my cousin. This is my brother. This is my sister. And to have that relational component that's so much closer, to have that connectivity in with that. I often think in my family, the godfather relationship. It is such an honor in my family to be asked to be a godfather. I have a goddaughter and I have a godson. And I was so happy to say the prayer over my goddaughter's wedding recently. It was just such a beautiful thing to see her rise up from a little girl to the woman she is today, and to be there, to be present, and to just have that honor to delight in a very beautiful message for that day. And to have that was such an honor. I just thank my oldest brother Glenn for doing that for me, and having that special relationship, and the things that his wife and their family have done to make it and to continue traditions and practices over time. For my godson, it's my best friend is Henry Went, and his son is Henry Hawkins Went. Henry's the seventh, and his son is the eighth. So to have Hawkins as my godson, and the opportunities that he presents with, to get to have closeness and connection. 3 years back, I was fortunate enough to be on the team with Shane for the employee appreciation event, and we did a scramble and we took first place. I was headed over to my godson's house, and I was like, "This is fortuitous. Here you go." And I got a basket for him from the first prize and some discs. And then next year, I was fortunate to win first place again, and now I have a basket. So when we go to each other's houses, we have like this thing, something that his dad and I shared, as disc golfing in Milwaukee and all the surrounding areas. Just to be in connection with nature, to be walking around, to be having fun, to be physically active, time for communication, to have all that together was so important. How many conversations can be had when you're walking around with somebody for hours, in and out of woods and in and out of beautiful landscapes, and to have just real opportunities to connect and to share things. And so this is really a healing path. There's many different healing paths that we can go on, but I believe culture, connection, and these relationships are going to be the best way to support each other spiritually, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Anything to conclude our communication for today?
No, I'm good. I'm good. But yeah, I really enjoy these conversations of helping one another, and just having this open dialogue to find services for people wherever they're at in their lives. So thank you again for the opportunity to share a little bit of my life experience. Like I said, I'm not a know-it-all, and I'm just sharing what I experienced and what I've seen in my life. So thank you.
And I also want to say thank you for the time and for the questions and participation. And I hope that this resonates with somebody either watching it in the future, being here present, but even leaving you with questions and saying, what is it something that you could do today to support that relationship that's going to build over time, and to be such a protective factor in somebody's life that when they go through that hardship, you're on top of it. You're there. you're aware, you're present. That person can come to you with a soft heart, open mind, and to be investing now and today and tomorrow and the future, and with your time and with your energy and with your connectivity and relationship, so that when future problems happen, they stay close to the fire. They come home.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's my question for anybody today. I just would hope that they would think about that, how they can commit themselves to their friends, their family, their community. It's a grassroots effort. If you want to make change, it starts with you. It starts with your heart, your mind, your thinking, your communications. So thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Pinagigi, John, and Joe, for sharing your knowledge and your time with us today. People want to keep hearing you talk, so I think we'll have to invite you back for October or November. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. We appreciate you spending part of your day learning with us. As a reminder, today's recording will be posted on the Department of Health website and our Facebook page. We hope that you will join us for our next virtual education series on Wednesday, August 26th, featuring Rachel Dozer, dual diagnosis therapist out of the House of Wellness, who will help us to be empowered and informed on substance safety and overdose prevention. You can use the same WebEx link for every session in the series. If you would like to add the recurring calendar invitation, please email Jamie or I, and we'll be happy to forward it to you. And before you leave, we would greatly appreciate your feedback. Please take a few minutes to complete our evaluation by using the survey link that I will place in the chat. And if you have any additional questions or suggestions for future topics, please reach out to Jamie or myself, and we will place our email addresses in the chat. So thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Oh.